The tiny Principality of Liechtenstein was on the verge of buying the huge territory of Alaska from Russia, thus beating the US to it. The story sounds too incredible to be true, which is why it was dismissed as a rumor for a long time. In the meantime, however, it has been confirmed by the Prince of Liechtenstein himself. So today we look at the incredible story of why Liechtenstein almost bought Alaska. Alaska was occupied from the 18th century by Russia, which used it mainly as a base for fur hunting. Russia, in fact, moved its border further and further east in the centuries before and eventually crossed the Bering Strait to take possession of parts of the American continent as well. However, it quickly became clear that Russia had overstretched itself with the conquest of Alaska, as the area was now simply too far from the Russian center. In addition, after a century, a large part of the sea otters had already been wiped out, making the fur trade increasingly difficult. It also faced increasingly competition from other colonial powers, especially the British. Russia would not have been able to defend it in case of an invasion by Great Britain, but they wanted to avoid further expansion of the British Empire. So it was clear that Alaska had to be sold. So the Russians started looking for a potential buyer, but it had to be a country that would not compete with the Russians and would not pose a threat to the far eastern Russian territory. As we know, that choice eventually fell on the United States, which was expanding at the time. They won the bid for Alaska in 1867 for $7.2 million, which would be like $120 million today. But what went unmentioned for a long time was that the United States was not the only state with which the Russians were negotiating. It was only in recent years that the whole story of the negotiations over Alaska became public. In fact, even before talking to the United States about a sale, Tsar Alexander II turned to the Prince of Liechtenstein, with whom he had good relations at the time, and offered him the vast territory for sale. In order to compare the incredible scales once again, one must look at the area of the two states. Alaska is almost 11,000 times larger than Liechtenstein, which means that the purchase would have made Liechtenstein one of the largest colonial powers of the world. However, the prince refused. He would have had the financial means to do so, but did not see too much value in the territory apart from fur hunting. So he left Alaska to another buyer. And for this other buyer, the United States, the purchase of the territory turned out to be a real blessing. Only a short time later, a gold rush began and the black gold oil was found in Alaska. Moreover, due to its strategic location, it became indispensable for the United States. Liechtenstein, on the other hand, is annoyed until today that it did not make the purchase at the time. The story of Liechtenstein negotiating the purchase of Alaska only emerged in recent years and was initially dismissed as a rumor. In 2018, however, the Prince of Liechtenstein addressed the Liechtenstein newspapers with a letter to the editor. In the letter, he confirmed the truth of the story and spoke about the fact that there were often regrets in the family about the rejection of the offer. But it must be said that it would have been highly uncertain to what extent Liechtenstein would have managed to administer and, above all, defend the colony at that time. The dwarf state has today only 380,000 inhabitants. At the time of the Alaska purchase, even only about 8,000 inhabitants. And since other European powers, first and foremost the British and Spanish, had a great interest in Alaska, the territory would probably have been invaded and annexed by them sooner or later. Liechtenstein, unlike the United States, was simply not powerful enough and was also geographically too far away from America. Moreover, Liechtenstein did not even have its own port from which the overseas territory could have been reached, so other European powers could have easily cut it off. But if the territory had remained in Liechtenstein's hands despite all the difficulties, it would certainly have become one of the most popular destinations for German emigrants in search of a new life, and Liechtenstein would be a much bigger player on the international stage today. So, that was it with the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in other colonial stories, I can recommend you my last video where I talked about the Swedish colonial empire in the Americas. Enjoy the video and see you next time.